Hello, family, friends, and interested viewers. Um, I wanted to make a video about some of the subjects that I've had to study and learn about concerning spiritual growth. And if you don't know what spiritual growth means, it's basically a subject of maturity. It's a subject that helps you get a grip on your existence. It's a subject that lets you get a grip on the perception of reality. And it's a subject that gets you grip on your mind, body, and spirit overall. The harmony that is those three individual but inseparable inside one of each other. The Trinity in us. And it's funny that I mentioned Trinity because it is a Trinity, and probably the same Trinity that is used when in religious speeches and when trying to explain the teachings of Jesus and Buddha, and probably in most other advanced religious cultures. But I've always said you don't have to be religious, because religion can be wrong. But the fact that you are somebody, you are something, and that being proof that you didn't make yourself, that you didn't come from yourself, that you owe nothing to yourself but the survival of the life you live. And even then, it might be for a higher power, the mercy of a higher power. So that's it. That's what it has to do with. And I will go on further explaining the context of each individual book, and just to spark some interest in people that are related to me, that might like what's inside of these books. Alright, let's move on to the next segment. One of the first books that I got into reading was the philosophy book by a company called DK. And this was during the process of me trying to find answers to a common behavior of feeling like you need to know where you're going in life. So I found it useful that maybe I should study on some of the ideas of the past. And I'm only gonna go through the ones that have impacted me the most. The few of the ones that have impacted me the most. Alright, the first subject, well, not the first subject, but still. The first that I wanted to explain is called the Tao that can be told is not the eternal Tao. What that means is that no matter how much we search to define God, God will never be what you're able to describe. because it's we're not designed to do that. We're not designed to define uh an eternal being, an eternal power that ironically after we die it will be like, well, how will I even know that I existed? It's not that we can know if there's a record being kept. There's a big library that where everything about my life is written, or if it even mattered. I mean, there's just things that we're not able to describe the eternal. So the Tao that can be told is not the eternal Tao. That's one of the most important in my book, in my mind, because it gives me a chance to perceive life as something that's not rigged to happen, something that's not perfectly organized to be, as I perceive it. There's, and as unfortunate as it sounds and tragic, bad things happen that I cannot premeditate on time, and all these unfortunate surprises, but tragic surprises. But it also, it's more hurtful. It's more hurtful knowing that there's more unfortunate surprises than there is surprises is about, oh my god, we found a cure to AIDS. That shit hasn't happened yet. Man, it might happen, but usually there's more unfortunate surprises than good ones. So, or as they say, more bad news than good news. But still, it's not up to me to perceive life so horrible, because it's not. And that's why that has to do with defining reality correctly. Alright. The next one on the list is by Siddhartha Gautama. And I forgot to mention the first philosopher was Lao Tzu. And all these people are about 400 to 500 years before the year zero. Not 1000, my bad, but the year zero, or year one, at least. We're the year 2013. So this was 2,513 years ago that people actually had already figured out very important ideas. So Siddhartha Gautama was one of them. Siddhartha. And a lot of people believe that he was the first incarnation of what we know today as Jesus. Not Jesus himself, but an incarnation of the same Trinity that as what Jesus was born to try to change the world or push it into the next phase of development. But on the other side of the world, which was China, and He said, happy he who has overcome his ego. Now, if you don't know what the ego means, and you don't know what happiness means, then you will not understand anything about what this means. When we get further into the explaining the key subjects, there's gonna be a part of this video where I explain what the yin and yang really means, and that we are electromagnetic beings that cause situations around us when there is an imbalance in our spirit. That imbalance is caused by the lack of your awareness of what the ego is, by your lack of having a discipline on your ego, and trying to be happy the wrong way. As in, people that think happiness is a train of pleasure throughout the day, throughout your whole life. That's not true. That's not true. Actually, happiness will come from a balance of working hard, willingly to work hard and take a break the right way. But you can't do that if your ego has control of your life. And the ego is, in psychological terms, because it's not something easy to explain, it's a part of you that it's a mental part of you that thinks it knows what you are, but it's actually the part of your brain that is attempting to decipher existence. And the impact of existence on your brain leads to a development of a self-image, sometimes a false belief of what you are, mostly as a self-defense mechanism to know how to identify yourself to others, especially if you want to be perceived by others as the strong, tough, smart one. Let me tell you, there is self-destruction, people. It is very important to have confidence in yourself, but it's self-destruction when you mix your ego with confidence. Because I could believe I can fly and throw myself off the roof, and I'm probably gonna hit the floor, and that might not go so well for me. So confidence can be deceiving. So when you mix ego and confidence, it becomes a formula for self-destruction. Alright, so basically what Siddhartha said, and I'm gonna read off the book here, says, suffering is an inherent part of existence, from birth through sickness and old age to death. The cause of suffering is desire, craving for sensual pleasures, and attachment to worldly possessions and power. Suffering can be ended by detaching oneself from craving and attachment, And the 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 process that Siddhartha came up with was the eightfold path, which means to eliminate desire and overcome the ego. Now, we all know that there's a sickness called addiction in our world today. And this addiction is mainly caused by the ego, because it seeks to hold a position of power, either by working itself to death, to have an excuse that it's not lazy and it's better than others. Basically, always finding an excuse to prove that you're better than somebody. And you could die a legend, but you're still dead. And you worried instead about being great and mighty. But there's nothing in the books of life that say that that's even a purpose for the existing. Yes, it's important to have something to offer. It's important to have what it takes. But it was never said it was important to have to be the great and mighty one. So a lot of it has to do with wisdom and humility. And that's something that I've never understood, because I was never into this, and I did feel like I needed to be that strong at one point in my life, but it just turned out as a formula for self-destruction. So let's move on to the next subject. I'm talking about the ego. Since we came to the subject so fast, the other two books that I was gonna mention is exactly about all that, and that book is called New Earth by Eckhart Tolle. Alright, and I'll show you the cover to that book. So those two covers I just showed y'all, is one is called The Resurrection of the Soul by Deepak Chopra, and that one too explains about the harmful effects of the ego and how to define your ego for what it is, how to overcome your ego with meditation practice, or having a new pattern of thinking that isn't about having a pattern of thinking. It's a pattern of thinking that naturally develops for a sincerity that you develop towards dedicating your life to changing and the growth of your conscience. Okay. Okay, so the next um, breakthrough philosophy was by Epicurus, and he came up with the idea that death is nothing to us. And that's something that I was able to accept myself because of what I had mentioned earlier about not knowing that we even existed after we die. So it's like you go through 80 years of bullshit, heartbreak, and divorce. I lost my legs in some case. I went blind. Some people don't ever go through loss like that. My children died. Some horrible shit. And horrible shit does happen. So, and then all of a sudden, it's sort of like, will we ever know that we lived at all? And it's also in one of the other books I showed you earlier on New Earth, where Eckhart Tolle says that we are all destined to return to the nothingness that we came from. But that actually has a deeper meaning than I could ever put in words. I can't, because I'm not at that experience level yet. But death is nothing to us is huge, because I think, or I want to believe that sometimes things happen and situation happens and situations don't happen depending on how you live your life. And there's some horrible events that we can't do nothing about, no matter how intelligent and wise you are. If Albert Einstein was in the Twin Towers the day the planes crashed in them, no matter how smart he was, he probably would have died. But could it be that because of what he knew or didn't know, or whatever knowledge of his spiritual being that he knew about, he ended up being in the bottom of the towers before they were hit? It wasn't that nobody survived, it was that some people died. Not all of them. Also, but massacres that happen when people go into schools and kill. Once again, it's not. Is it a random choosing? Or is it that some people are saved by being of value alive? They have something to offer and contribute to the collective that is our society on earth, to push forward and the growth to continue. Is that was it that the people that died, they were done? Were they done? And they so happened to have been through this situation that mark the end of their purpose. And that's what I'm saying. It's something that I feel like believing sometimes, so I don't feel so worthless, or that my mind has so very little meaning, and it can be put at an end so quickly and meaningless by the hands of the corrupted. That is what death is nothing to us leads us to think about. That's why it was so important, because he got people thinking about, why do you really care if you die or not? And you gotta take in mind, this dude was part of the Greek times, during the Spartan times, during the I got a sword and a shield and I'm stabbing somebody. Wartime. People used to slice each other. Seriously. Well. And it also leads to another theme that I'm gonna talk about later. That how do we really know the past is true when all we know is the future we were born in? All I know is about microphones and cameras and the LED TV in my room and stuff like that. How do I know the past is really true? And that in God's intelligence, we all live in one time. And the past is some kind of put together story of something that can be proven that happened recently. But let's say reality was really only a few hundred years old. How can we prove that it's not all just built up for the existence that you are for now? And then when we die, where's the history? Only history is here. History is only here, alive. Alright, well that's what he meant to get us thinking. So let's move on to the next. Alright, the next philosophy breakthrough is called "The soul is distinct from the body." And this is by Avicenna. Now this guy now this was the beginning of Christianity growing. The apostles and disciples of the church going out there and writing, taking information down on the different type of tribes and people and the religious politics. Now this guy noticed something. He noticed that the soul is something you can't fake. The soul is something you can't put a mask on, because you will get consequences for the soul that you have. And just because you put a mask on your face doesn't mean that you're gonna, that you're covering your soul. Your soul is unmaskable. It's radiating in and out of you, your body and your mind. It's inside each other of both your body and your mind. And the soul is not the electricity, it's what I could describe as the electromagnetic energy that is made of the universe connected into you in order for you to exist. Is that I can't move my hand without everything that needs to be connected to it in order for it to move. Muscles, bones, tissue, cells, all of it. And the soul is not those things exactly. It's in those things. It's inside of us. It's inside of our mind, our body. The soul is it's in the conscience, in our conscience, and in us being human. You know that it's part of our package as existing beings. So a lot of people don't find it interesting to realize that life isn't a simple subject. We're not talking about cookies. We're not talking about something simple. We're not talking about... I don't know what to use as an example of something really simple, but it's beyond that. And when you're not aware of that incredible truth that is your mind, body, and spirit, you will find no interest in knowing the soul is distinct from the body, because you're gonna tolerate the BS that comes to your to your life because of you. But you're never gonna realize that it's happening because of you, because your soul needs to be worked on, or the fact that you ignore that you have a soul, and that your soul is producing a bubble around you of cause and effect in your life. And you're gonna tolerate the BS, and you're gonna hate life, and you're gonna be angry. You're gonna be angry at other people, and you're not gonna like other people. You're gonna feel too different to relate. That has to do with working on your ego. The soul is distinct from the body because it's not something you can mask. I can put a mask on my face. There is no mask that you can put on your soul. There's nothing you can hide from your soul, because your soul is gonna cause shit to happen or in your life for either doing the right thing or not doing the right thing. Right is wrong, wrong is wrong, and your soul knows it, because it's gonna cause some shit. It's gonna cause struggles, inconveniences, sometimes tragedies. And it's just because you don't know. That's where you need to start. As a human being, start knowing you have a soul, and that your soul is that which they say God foresees your thoughts and actions. Yes, because your soul is God's. It's God's soul. You are God's. You are God's property. And yes, we're free to choose from these random options to live life. But even if it seems that we're free, no. You're free to love life, to be a hard worker, to be responsible. You're not free completely. You may think you're free enough to go rape and then think it's okay. You may think you're free enough to go kill thousands of people. That freedom is apparently yours. How sad that these people did what they did, not knowing that they were property of something more amazing. So anyways, the soul is distinct from the body. Anyways, that's today's episode on explaining the books, and I hope you enjoyed it. We will continue with part 2 of explaining the books tomorrow. I am gonna do these in episode format because it's a show that I'm trying to do where I explain interesting books that have changed my life, literally have changed the consequences of my life, and in hopes of motivating family, friends, and interested viewers on the same subjects, so we can have a lot more common ground to relate on, and we have better chances at living in unity and causing harmony with the common wisdom between us, between one another. There is no harmony without any common wisdom, and that wisdom sometimes comes from, I'm not a materialistic, but you are, or you are a materialistic and I'm not, stuff like that. So that being said, have a great day everybody, and thank you for watching.